Sorry that we haven't started yet. What I would also like you to write to me right now is what stage are you currently at? So are you already selling to customers, or you're developing a minimum viable product, or you are already in the scale up phase? So feel free to use the Q&A part of the webinar. You can write me, hi, we are doing this and this, and our current stage is that and that. And based on that, I can then maybe include examples which will be more relevant to whatever you might need. So moving forward, let's discuss product market fit a little bit. Product market fit is something which is spoken about quite a lot. Companies always come to us as to investors, and they always say, yes, we have product market fit, and then we ask them, what does it actually mean to have product market fit? When is the right time that you have product market fit, and what is the data that supports that you have product market fit? It's something where I can illustrate a little bit with a story what it actually meant for us when we were building one of the innovations in automotive industry. In 2017, I was the co-founder of Škoda Auto Digilab. You probably know what Škoda is. It's a German, actually Czech, but owned by Volkswagen, a car manufacturer, value car manufacturer. And in 2017, they decided to set up a lab which would focus not on improving cars, but it would focus on actually improving the whole mobility experience. Because at some point they realized it's not only about selling more and more cars, it's also about thinking of certain personas and their challenges with mobility. And those personas are usually people who are not willing to buy a car, or are not able to drive themselves, or are not or are living in environments where owning a car is not very, how would I say, it's not very advantageous. So imagine when you're living in a big city, you have to solve all the problems regarding to parking, moving around and parking again. And for young people, there are certain young professional personas for whom owning a car doesn't make that much sense. So this was the reason why Škoda Auto Digilab was set up, and I was there responsible for a department which was responsible for customer research, validation of new concepts, and collaborations with startups. And this example, which I want to describe to you in a bit, is one of those examples where we found some interesting insights. We did a market study in Munich, and we found some insights that there are certain groups of people for whom mobility is needed, but they themselves aren't able to do anything about it. So everything is complicated for them because they don't require, they're unable to drive a car. Taxi is fulfilling their service only partly, because if you look at taxis, it's something that is mobility only from a sidewalk to a sidewalk, whereas they needed something a bit more sophisticated, which would maybe go all the way to a to their door, or somebody who would go with them to a supermarket and so on. So we thought there is a gap, and why not fill this gap with a service which we called Mobility with Care, or at some point it was called Care Driver. And we decided, okay, let's build an MVP in about 4 months. So we built an MVP, and we started running the service with 4 cars, and we identified the first 2 personas, and it was the personas of vulnerables, so people who were not able to take care of themselves in terms of mobility, and those are kids. I think it was up to the age of 15, and it was people, so senior people who were either living alone in their homes, or those were people who were living in bigger facilities for older people. So we started driving these people around, and we had about 15 different hypotheses on how it could work, what could be the added advantage, and so on and so on. And it wasn't really picking up the pace. So we drove a few kids to school. We drove through seniors to doctors. We waited with them in the waiting rooms. We took them to supermarkets. We helped them carry whatever they needed. And what was interesting is that we had a few people who were very frequent users, so they were very valuable users. But then we had quite a lot of people who tried once, and that's it. They tried once, maybe they tried it twice. And this was always happening when we changed the proposition a little bit, because we said, okay, let's give ourselves like 9 months of experimentation window, so we would try different hypotheses and see which one actually works the best. So we were shifting around the propositions. We were allowing people to book through their phone. We were allowing people to book through their app. We were then targeting so grandchildren of older people, whether they want to book for them. We were targeting parents, we were targeting schools. Then we started targeting elderly homes. And we tried all of these things, but nothing really worked. We were always pushing money into it, and we only had some, mediocre success where few people tried it, but it wasn't really scaling. We were never in this phase where we would have not enough capacity to serve everyone. And this kind of gave us a feeling that, okay, we have to study a little bit what actually product market fit is. And we discovered that with this service, after about 1 year, we haven't matched it to we haven't matched our product to the needs of the customers, because there were always some roadblocks which prevented us from scaling this service in a massive fashion. So at that point, we realized that with every single other project that we do in Škoda, and a few of them are very successful, and a few of them are running in multiple cities in Europe, we said that first we have to look at what is the product market fit and how do we actually achieve this product market fit. In the meantime, let me just have a look at what you wrote. Okay, I see that some of you are still in development, some of you are MVP level. Okay, so I will keep this a little bit broad. So actually, this project was closed after about 12 months, roughly, of experimentation, where we couldn't really find product market fit. In the last iteration, we actually tried doing it in a different city. So we said to ourselves that maybe there is just some problem with Munich, that we were unable to do this in Munich, and maybe that's the problem. So we tried it in Prague as well. Didn't work that well either. So we have to keep in mind product market fit, right? And so when we look at product market fit, we had a feeling that is not happening. So the customers are not getting that much value, or they are not perceiving that the value that they're paying for is sufficient. Because one of our hypotheses was that if we start advertising it in elderly homes, then people would word of mouth would start spreading, because it's a facility where there are multiple people, they talk to each other, and if one of them starts using the service and they find great, then maybe that's gonna organically spread to all the others, and that would mean that we would have a validated scaling strategy, that we just go around the senior homes and we offer the service. But this wasn't happening. So in one case, we had a person who had to go to they had to travel to a medical facility every day or every second day, and he was our power user, because this person was using the service almost for the whole time that we were running it. But somehow the word of mouth wasn't spreading. So he had a special case, and for him, this service made sense, also from the point of view of how much they have to pay. But that's it. Okay, so you always feel when the product market fit is not happening, and then you do have to do a lot of these iterations to identify whether there is something that you can do about it. On the other hand, you can also feel when it is happening. So you have so many orders that you're unable to satisfy everyone. So when you get to the point that you're unable to satisfy everyone who is reaching out to you and who wants to buy your product, then you can kind of feel that the product market fit is there, and especially when you start getting repeat customers. So when you're so the value of your customers is increasing over time, meaning that your customers are not leaving and they're coming back to you and they're spending more and more money. So customer lifetime value is increasing over time. Then you know that product market fit is probably there, because if people start coming back and they maybe also bring their friends together, they bring their relatives, then you probably arrived at something valuable. So we always say that before you develop a product, you must be sure that there are some people who are willing to pay for it. This is the whole logic get out there quickly, get your validation quickly, maybe try to do some pre-sales, maybe try to sell an idea before actually putting all the resources into development. And there are some tools which you can utilize in order to arrive at this. What it also means to have product market fit is that you found yourself a good market, and good market meaning there is enough people who have a certain problem, or you can access quite a lot of people who have a certain problem, and you have a product which solves their problem. So at this point, it's good to start thinking about what kind of jobs is your customer trying to achieve, how is the customer achieving these jobs today, and what are you bringing to the table? How are you making it better? How are you making it faster, cheaper, easier to use, more convenient, blah, 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 blah. Okay, there are multiple qualities, and we will discuss this, all of this. So if we would map it on a graph, it's very popular to use graph to illustrate these things. You have two main things, okay? So you have a market on the bottom where there is enough target customers. So you're not building this product for one person. Even if you're building it for one person, then of course this one person has to pay for all of your development and so on and so on. But you're looking for a sizable market. And you're also looking at something where the needs are underserved. And I'll be showing you an example in a minute from a company called McDonald's, where they actually found an underserved market and an underserved need in a very special situation. And then on the other hand, you have a product which is answering by a value proposition. So you're bringing something which is solving this. You have a good feature set. So it's doing everything that you're expecting of it that it will do, or maybe even a little bit more. And you have good user experience. So it's easier to use, it's easy to use. There is enough value in it, and people are actually able to understand it from the proposition. So from what you are selling to them. And this could be defined as a product market fit. When these two come together and people realize the value that the product is offering. So we will discuss in a bit more detail how can we actually achieve this product market fit, because having a project in development, having a company in development, having an MVP in development, we have to start thinking, what are we trying to achieve with this development that we are doing, with this MVP that we're creating, with this prototype that we are building, or with this initial launch that we did. Okay, so there are certain tools, and I'm pretty sure that some of you have already heard about the design thinking process. The design thinking process was created actually a long time ago. It was back in the 40s by British Design Council. They created this double diamond structure in order to create a methodology on how to develop products in a better way, and how to develop them in a systematic way. This is actually very similar to how a industrial designer would approach building a new chair or designing something physical, something that you interact with every day. And it's based on 4 phases, and we will discuss these 4 phases in a bit more detail. So if you look at the 2 main parts, those are 2 diamonds, and we follow them from left to right. So what it tells us at the beginning is that we have to do a little bit of research. We have to do a little bit of empathy. We have to do a little bit of watching, so gathering some data. We open our minds and we go out and we collect data. What it also means at the beginning is that we are aware of some kind of an opportunity, of some kind of a problem that there might be. So we have a topic area that we want to explore, and we want to explore it by talking to people who are experiencing that particular problem. So for example, back at Škoda, we had an example where we knew that buying and selling used cars is a problem. It is a big market. There are a lot of transactions happening, and people are generally not too happy about it. So this was our awareness phase. So we were aware that there might be some opportunity in there, and that it would make sense that we go out and understand better what are the actual particular problems. So in this first phase of the double diamond, we went out, we did, I don't know, about 40 different interviews with different people, such as users who were buying many used cars, people who experienced it for the first time. We were speaking to dealers. We were even speaking to a car thief We were trying to understand what is it that they do with the cars and which cars are valuable and why. And this gave us a concrete kind of idea about what the problem is. So people who are buying a used car for the first time, they're trying to achieve something that we called a fair purchase. So they were trying to buy a car which was not altered in any way. The kilometers which were on the odometer were actually the real ones, and the process was easy, and no one tried to fool us around or scam us. So this is something that we found. And when we move into the define phase, this is where we actually look at all the data that we gathered. During our empathy phase, we also managed to buy a used car from a used car dealer, and then we also managed to sell it to another dealer. So we experienced it ourselves, and we went through quite a lot of this experience it on your own process. Because when you go there and you look at it with your own eyes, you might notice some interesting things. In the second phase, which is the define phase, we were trying to pick out the interesting insights, right? So for us, the interesting insights were, especially with these people who are trying to buy a used car and they want it to happen in a simple way, something that is not too complicated, something that they can trust. And so they had trust issues, they had selection issues. I have 60 different options. Which one should I go for? I also need some financing help. And we collected multiple of these insights, and we arrived in the middle of the double diamond. In the middle of the double diamond, you could say that you have you can produce a design brief. So the design brief for us was, how might we create a platform which makes it easy and safe for you to buy a used car? Pretty easy. We moved into the third phase, which is prototyping phase. And in this prototyping phase, it's all about coming up with these multiple different ideas on how you could solve these problems. The more you come up with, the better. You can also give yourself some quantitative and qualitative parameters by which you will judge them. So which ones you will move forward, which ones you want to take to the market and test, and which ones you actually want to build a prototype with. And then in the last phase, which was the validation phase, I think we built 5 different prototypes for various services, and we created some landing pages, we created some validation campaigns, and we went out and gathered some pre-orders. We were gathering some leads, and we were generally measuring how people are responding to these propositions. So which gave us way more insight into which one should we focus on, instead of us coming up with these ideas of what we could develop it without having any customer insight. So if I would sum it up, and we will then also go through these phases one by one. This methodology will help you arrive at what problems your customers have, what context do they live in, what needs they have, and actually you will see quite a lot of different patterns. So you will maybe end up with multiple different personas. So because customer groups are never the same, and you never have one customer group, you have multiple with different special needs. You can also look for early adopters, because these people will at some point you can ask them after your research phase, would you like to see our proposition? Would you like to see our solution? Would you like to give us some feedback? That's something that you can always do. And of course, you have some hypotheses at the beginning. You might be thinking that you know the solution already, and by doing this research and by doing the testing, you are de-risking your whole process, because some of the hypotheses will come as true, some of them will come as false, and you will have a way better understanding before you actually devote a lot of resources and a lot of money. So this is something to keep in mind. We will also come back to it a little bit later, and I'll speak about it again. What is also important is that this is an iterative process. Okay, so it's not sufficient that you do it only once. And when we do design thinking workshops for Google, we always say that you have to do it multiple times, because you will always get more and more insights. And this is always difficult for our corporate customers to understand, that they think that it's sufficient to go through this only once, and that at the end they will have a money-making machine. It's not usually the case. You will reduce your risk, and it will be cheaper for you to do it once than as to the other way of doing it, which is invest a lot of money into something which you develop for a long time and then you launch it at the market and nobody wants it, which happens quite often, especially in these big projects where it takes 2 or 3 years to develop and then all of a sudden you launch it. It hasn't seen a customer before, it hasn't seen a customer insight before, and then surprise, surprise, nobody wants to pay for it. And then they have to start iterating and trying to bend it somehow so that people actually want it. And this is not the optimal way of doing it. What is also important in this process is that when you start speaking and testing with customers, you will speak to them in the first phase, which is the empathy phase, and you will also try to sell them something or show them the results in the fourth stage, which is the validation phase. It always makes sense to test with extreme users. Try to imagine it in a way that, let's say, we're improving the process of taking a flight and the onboard service and the way that you fit out the cabin in an airplane. Let's say that we want to improve the service of an airline. Whom do we talk to? Well, we could talk to the average person who flies, I don't know, twice a year or 3 times a year or 5 times a year. I don't know what the average in Europe is, but we could maybe speak to extreme users. And in this sense, I mean people who are frequent travelers because they are more receptive to tiny little changes. So they notice way more things than the average person would. And especially if they have exposure to multiple different airlines, they'll tell you exactly what the differences in service are. And then secondly, the other side of extreme users, well, those are people who are going to fly for the first time because they haven't experienced it. They have beginner's eyes. They try it for the first time. They see it for the first time. So those are actually very ideal to speak to. And those two groups will give you so many insights which you will never get from the majority of the average user. So it definitely makes sense to get insights from extreme users and also to test with your extreme users when you're in the validation phase. Now is a good time for you to think a little about who could be your extreme users, or who could be the extreme personas that you could potentially speak to. It's something good to keep in mind and something to come back to. What is also important about these early adopters, which I was mentioning, is that the early adopters are a group of people who see the value in your product earlier than all the other groups, and they're also, how would I say, they're not so afraid of the solution not working out. So they have way higher tolerance for risk, and they are more willing to try things out. Okay, so now we have quite a lot of discussions about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and so on. You probably know some people in your surrounding who are early adopters of Bitcoin, or who are early adopters of NFTs. They have certain characteristics. They're very open to try it out, and then when the late majority comes in, it's great. But first, you want to find those early adopters, because those will be the ones which will fuel the initial growth of the company. After we have spoken to our customers, and after we have gathered some insights, we gathered some knowledge, we see what the problem is, we could move into building a value proposition, because value proposition is one of the key things when you want to go and test something, when you want to go and test a proposition. So building a value proposition is something that tells the customer the number one reason why the product or the service is best suited for that particular customer. Okay, so when you identify your target group properly and their needs, and then you matched it with a perfect value proposition, then there should be an instant match. So they should realize right away what the value is that you're offering. So we could also illustrate it with a story. You probably all know this company. It's McDonald's, and McDonald's was trying to improve the sales of their milkshakes. I'm pretty sure most of you tried a McDonald's milkshake. You have a strawberry, vanilla, I think a chocolate, and now they have multiple other variations. But they wanted to improve the sales of it. They wanted to improve the general product, so they went out and spoke to people, and they gave them tips on on how they could change the packaging, and so they gave them multiple ideas about what they could do, and McDonald's took them, implemented them, and nothing happened. There was no change in sales. There was no change in how successful the product is, and so on. So they reached out to a couple of Harvard professors in the US and told them, this is our problem. We want to improve the milkshake. So these professors, they said, okay, give us some time. We're going to go out. We're going to go to restaurants and we're going to study the people for a while. And so to see, what is the reason? Why do they actually buy the milkshake? So these professors came over and they stayed at the restaurant, and they were watching people, who were coming in, who were buying a milkshake, whether they ate it in the restaurant or they took it in their car or they bought it through McDrive and so on and so on. And they found very interesting insights. So most of the milkshakes on a day were sold before 9 a.m. Who would have thought? Majority was sold to people who were alone, also interesting. And majority of the people were also not eating it in the restaurant, but they were taking the milkshake and they were driving off. So they came another day and they started asking these people after they bought the milkshake, and as they were walking out of the restaurant, they were asking them, why did you buy it? What kind of problem is this milkshake solving for you? What kind of competitors does this milkshake have? And this is where the jobs to be done theory came about, because for every problem which you have, so you have a certain job, there is a product or a service which fulfills this job. And they were asking them, so what kind of job is this milkshake solving for you? And they found out that people are actually using the milkshake for breakfast, because so the average commute at that time was about 60 minutes to work, and they were looking for something which they could eat and it would also serve as a breakfast. So you might be asking, what are the competitors of a milkshake? And some of these people, they told them. So number one competitor was a banana. But the problem with banana was that you eat it super quickly. So, you eat it in 2 or 3 minutes, and that's it. Another good competitor was bread and butter. So, something that you just put on the bread. The problem was that it's difficult to eat it while you're driving. So you have to drive with your knees and you eat. Not very safe. I don't recommend. And then the third competitor was Snickers bar. But the guy who said the Snickers bar, he said, it fulfills all the things that I need from a breakfast, and I can eat it while I'm driving. It gives me enough energy for the morning, but I just feel so guilty eating it before 9 a.m. So that's why I take the milkshake. And this is very interesting because they wrote a whole book about this. So jobs to be done theory. We have to start thinking, what is the customer trying to achieve by buying a particular product, particular service, and how is my product or service making it better? How do I make it easier for them? So, because there are always some pains associated with the current solution. Okay, so Snickers bar makes you feel guilty. Banana, you eat it super fast and it doesn't give you enough energy. And then you had some bread which is dangerous to drive with. Okay, so it all has drawbacks. And then this milkshake comes along and people realize that easy to drink or easy to drive and drink because it's a bottle. Secondly, you will never finish it under 10 or 15 minutes because it's a little bit cold and you have to suck it through a straw, and it just takes time, which is advantageous in this case, because if it takes you 20 to 25 minutes to finish a milkshake, well, you're driving, so it's something that entertains you. And the energy value is also so high that people claim that it's fine to sustain them until lunch. And you have clear advantages over your competitors, the banana, the bread, and the Snickers bar. So this is something to keep in mind, and this is something which you will definitely need when you start building your proposition. Okay, so when I move along, the idea was that you're hiring products and services for jobs, so your personal jobs or your company's jobs, so something that you want to achieve. Illustrated, it looks something like this. So this is the value proposition canvas, something you can either download online when you want to start using it, or something which you will get in this presentation at the end. So on one hand, we have the customer profile on the right side. This customer tries to achieve some jobs, so have breakfast while driving. Current solutions have quite a lot of pains. So banana, you eat it quickly, the other one is dangerous, and the other one you feel guilt for. What would make the person happy? Well, the gains are that it would give you enough energy and you also won't kill yourself while you're eating it when you're driving to work. So that's the customer profile. And then it's our job to answer with a value proposition which answers these problems. So, McDonald's proposition would be the ultimate breakfast milkshake where, it relieves pain by being having enough energy in it, taking long to consume, and being easy to drive it. And it's also a game creator, is something that you don't have to prepare it before at home, but you just pick it up in the restaurant as you go. Try to think of this in terms of your products or services that you're developing. What are your customers trying to achieve? What are the problems which they have with the current solutions, and how can your product or service answer this and make it better? So how can it relieve the pain from the problems of the current solution, and how can it create some gains, something that will be beneficial, something that will make it advantageous, and so on. And of course, the answers on the right side, you can, of course, obtain by following the design thinking methodology, which I was just explaining, and doing a lot of these customer interviews, customer research, and this is something that will give you those answers. Also, jobs that the customer is trying to achieve. So, looking at the right side, gains. So the benefits that the customer is expecting in our McDonald's case is something that's going to take a reasonably long time to consume. That's a gain, and it's also easy to consume. Pains. So what are they experiencing negatively right now with all the compet so the how would say the competing products and services, and what is the customer job that they're trying to achieve. So have breakfast while driving. Easy. Okay, think of it, what it means for you. Value map. So on the left side, how is the product or service creating a gain? So how does it add value to what the customer is expecting? How does it relieve pain? So how does it make it easier compared to the competition? And what is the product or service that is actually fulfilling this? So I'm pretty sure you already have quite a lot of ideas for what it means for you in terms of your product or service. What is also important is that writing down a value proposition, you will probably not hit the right value proposition right at the beginning. So it's something that you have to iterate. Okay, so you have to always keep on creating it, testing it, and then based on the feedback that you get, again, reiterate it, do it again, test it again, and see how people are responding. Companies are probably never hitting the right proposition at the beginning. And as I was telling you the example with mobility with care, which we were doing in Munich, we were trying multiple propositions, and somehow we just couldn't find the one which would be working enough and which would be good enough. So keep in mind that it's an iterative process, and when you're building one, we try to keep it simple. So whenever we are trying to test our hypotheses before we actually have a product or have a service, we either do it in a way that we build a landing page, we build some kind of a digital ad, something that we can run on Facebook or Google, or something which we can send through an email, or we can also do a presentation. But to keep it simple, you can build a proposition by having a headline, a sub-headline, maybe 3 bullet points, and some visualization, which will kind of boost the whole message that you want to carry forward. There is an example, Uber. Okay, this is something which was probably iterated multiple times, but you get the point. Okay, tap the app, get a ride, and then there is some explanation to it, and then it kind of links you to multiple reasons why you should ride with Uber. There is also a bit of a visual, which is showing you, kind of getting you into the mood of, okay, here is an app and it's super easy because I just tap and then somebody comes along and then I can drive around the city or get around, and the car knows where to go. So all the important things, they're, as they're claiming, smartest way to get around. One tap and car comes directly to you. So this is probably built on the insight that you don't have to explain to a taxi driver where you are. Your driver knows exactly where to go, important, and payment is completely cashless. So you don't have to think about whether you have enough cash, whether the driver has enough cash to give back to you, so in return, and so on and so on. A good example. If you want to see more good examples, then I suggest Googling value proposition examples or unique value proposition examples. And if you need a little bit of an inspiration, this is something that I would definitely go for and look at. So there is multiple that you can find on the internet. You will see value propositions of IKEA, Airbnb, and all the big digital companies. So that definitely makes sense. Moving into the testing part, so let's imagine we did our research, we gathered our insights, we know what the jobs that the customers are trying to achieve are, we built our proposition, we maybe iterated our proposition a little bit. We have to test our propositions right now and test our assumptions. Okay, so we think that the ultimate new McDonald's milkshake is something that's going to solve all the problems of people who want to drive and have breakfast while they're driving. There is also a methodology on how to test these ideas. And the ones that we use the most often, also when building new products and services with corporates, is the riskiest assumptions testing, so RAT. It's also something that you can find on the internet, and there are also guidelines on how to do it. The idea of the riskiest assumptions test is that you come up with experiments which test the riskiest things about your future product or your future service. So something that kind of you go in an iterative process, and I'll illustrate it on a graph. So this is the graph. So at the beginning, let's say I come up with an idea to launch a new energy drink. I am somewhere on the very left. Okay, so I have total uncertainty whether it's going to work, and I have nothing in my hand. So I have no prototype, I have nothing. So for me, it makes sense that I go out and start speaking to people who are consuming energy drinks, and also to those who are not. So I get some initial insights upon which I could build my prototype. I go out and collect these. And before I start making the product, so designing the bottle and figuring out what to put inside and so on, I want to first get an idea. And the more ideas I get, I'm decreasing my uncertainty and I'm increasing the fidelity of my solution. Because if I build a proposition and I do a demo, or maybe I do a landing page, or I try to do a bit of a pre-order, then I haven't finished the whole product yet and I haven't started production, but I already know something about the market. I see how people are responding to whatever I'm trying to sell them, and the uncertainty is decreasing. Okay, and what usually happens with big corporate clients is that they, instead of showing what they are creating, what they want to have in the future, and so on, they keep their uncertainty level super high for a long time because they don't want to show anything to a customer. They don't want to go out and speak to customers. They don't want to do customer interviews, data collection, validation, and testing. So they rather keep their uncertainty level for high for a very long time, and then once they launch it, so they keep the uncertainty high, they increase the fidelity, and once they're happy with it after a few years, they launch it, and then they get the initial results, whether it works or not. In most cases, it doesn't work as they imagined because they haven't shown it to anyone and they haven't gathered any feedback. So it's important to keep this in mind. Map for yourself how much uncertainty do you have about your solution and how much fidelity do you have. Maybe you have too much fidelity and still high uncertainty. So it definitely makes sense that you go out and test it and get some feedback. So keep this in mind, and this is a good graph to use. How to do this testing? Well, there are multiple things. How to create initial revenue, how to get some first pre-sales, how to collect some money, how to collect some customers, maybe how to get some customer data or customers who would be willing to test your solutions once you have a demo. This is something that is very useful, and it's one of the best graphs I found on this topic. So on one hand, you have the problem validation. Okay, so if you're right at the beginning, first you want to validate that there is a problem. You have a hypothesis. My hypothesis is that there is no good energy drink in the market. I might be wrong, I might be right. So, but it makes sense for me to go out and talk to people and get some feedback from users of energy drinks and the non-users, and see what they say about it. So to validate my problem. Once I validated my problem, I'm going to build my value proposition. Okay, so I gathered what the problems are, what the jobs to be done are, and I designed my proposition of the energy drink 3.0. Then I have multiple ways of testing my proposition. You know, I can do landing pages, explainer videos, supermarket shelf testing, some pre-sales. You know, depending on whether I want to sell it on B2B level or B2C level, I can do some pre-orders and so on and so on. But I expose my solutions to the market, which is the most valuable way of actually getting some feedback. After this is validated and I see that people are responding positively to my value proposition, I can go and validate the solution, because solution and value proposition is something different. Solution is something that is way more sophisticated, so it's more of a prototype, whereas value proposition is just, you know, you telling what you're gonna solve for them. Moving into solution validation, my most favorite one, and the ones that we use more often, is the Wizard of Oz MVP. So you make your service look like it's, you know, it looks the same way as it would look when it's finished, but you're doing everything manually on the background. So of course, when we were doing the care driver in Munich, we made it look like it's an automated Uber-like platform where drivers and customers match automatically, blah, blah, blah. We made it look that way, but we were doing everything manually on the background. There was nothing automated because it's cheaper, faster, and you get customer insights earlier on. And one trap of making it all automatized at the beginning would be that we would spend a lot of money making it, you know, like automatized. But in case we figure out in the process that something should work differently, it's going to take us, you know, a long time to change it. So it makes sense to do it manually at the beginning, and then once you validate that this is the way it's going to work, then you can invest more money and program it. Product market fit. You know, this is when you are starting to scale, when you're investing money into scaling it and spreading the word and seeing the organic people coming in and using your service. There are multiple ways more than those four, but that's something also to keep for later once you have validated all the previous steps. Another important thing is, as some of you said, that some of you are still in the let me just check very quickly. If some of you are still in the MVP level, or they are not even in the MVP level, so you're still developing, what is important in these early stages is that you somehow get the word out, that you're here, that you're working on something, that you're solving a problem. Of course, there are multiple startups, or multiple, I mean, you can usually, the successful ones, you can count on one hand, and the non-successful ones, it's most of them. But startups which are developing something in a stealth mode, so they're not telling anyone, they keep it super secret. The successful ones you can count on one hand. Most of the ones which do this stealth development usually are not very, very successful. So for majority of companies, and we see it from the investment perspective, it definitely makes sense to spread the word and make a lot of buzz around themselves. Because by making a lot of buzz around themselves, they somehow create the momentum. They kickstart the whole discussion around the problem that they're solving, the solution that they will be bringing in a while, and it also makes it easier for them to recruit people to talk to recruit people who would be testing their demos, and generally just to have a positive view on the company. So, of course, surprise, surprise, the most difficult challenge is that companies at the beginning or in the early stage it's very difficult for them to get the word out and to somehow communicate with their potential future customers. So it's important that they somehow get into the shoes of a growth hacker. Probably you heard this very funny word called the growth hacker. It's an actual position. I mean, in the startup world, usually real companies don't really have growth hackers, but they have people who are fulfilling the same role. But it's cool to call them growth hackers. So those are the people who are obsessed with how could we actually get the word out and how could we optimize our funnel. And I'm going to show you in a bit what I mean by funnel. But let me first tell you a little bit who is a growth hacker and what is it that they try to achieve and what is it that they do. So growth hacker is someone who is responsible for acquiring more customers for a product or service. This is their pure job, okay? And by acquiring more customers for product or service, this is also applicable at the beginning when you're still developing something, because a positive outcome when you're not selling a product or service yet, a positive outcome of growth hacking activities is that you actually have enough people to speak to. You have enough people who signed up in your validation phase for testing, and it's also having enough people who maybe signed up for a pre-order, right? So during your validation phase, these growth hackers are important. So first, acquiring more customers or future customers. Second, making or turning your product or service into a drug, something that people want to interact with repeatedly. So they have high interaction rates. They're also able to speak to other people about it, and it's something that is in their eyes very valuable and something that they're willing to speak about. So creating this hype around a product or service. Thirdly, it's usually someone who is obsessed with understanding their personas, understanding the market, seeing how the market develops, seeing what is the competition doing and how the competition is fulfilling the customer jobs, what you could be doing better, and bringing interesting insights into development. They're also very creative. Okay, so you're always looking for cheap ways how to find people, how to get to people, how to gather customers, how to gather users, testers, whomever you might want. So you have to be creative about this. And one thing, it always makes sense not to hire an agency to do this, because you want to have this knowledge in the company. So I think it's worth the time looking for someone like this, and it's the outcome could then be valuable. Fifth, they are people who are not afraid to take risks, and this I mean by that they are willing to create an experiment based on the hypotheses which they might have. Okay, so they're not sticking to whatever they think is right, but they're willing to experiment. Do a little bit of a experimentation, gather some insights, and use those insights later on when you are launching something and when you're improving the product, when you're translating those customer insights into something that is valuable. One tip based on a experience which we did when I was working for a utilities company in 2016, they asked us to build, or we actually found some insights where people were coming up to the company. It was an electricity and gas company in Slovakia. And on the customer centers which they had, people were walking up to them and they were asking people at the customer center, could you help me fix my heating system, or could you help me with plumbing? Because you are dealing with electricity and gas, so you might be there to help me also with these things. Or would you help me replace my gas heater? But these are things which utility companies are not doing. But this was an interesting insight that there might be a market, because we started getting more and more of these requests, and of course we couldn't satisfy them in any way. So we said, okay, maybe based on this insight, we could build a solution. In the end, we built Willio. Willio is a platform, a double-sided platform, which on one hand was aggregating handymen, so people who are good at painting walls, people who are good at helping you in the garden, people who are good at doing all kinds of repairs in your home, fixing your plumbing, doing stuff with gas heater, you get the point. So most of the stuff which needs to be done at home, and you need someone qualified to do this. So this is one side. And on the demand side, we were trying to aggregate all these 550,000 customers which we had in electricity and gas. 550,000 homes and flats who, from time to time always need something that needs to be fixed. And this was the time in 2016 when we discovered the role of growth hacking, because we were faced with two big challenges. One big challenge is, how do you get enough handymen on this platform when these handymen are usually super busy? It's a problem. And then on the other hand, how do you prove to the demand side, so to the customers, how do you prove to them that you have enough people that will fix their problems, so people that will do the jobs which they have? And we came up with something very creative. It was cheap and it worked, and then we realized that this is actually the role of a growth hacker, to do things like this. But usually, when these platforms were being built, they tried to aggregate the people who were, so the handyman first. But that's very difficult, because if you call up a handyman and you tell them, please download this platform, maybe you will find some jobs there. There is no need for them. There is no reason why they should join. Maybe you would have to pay them, but then it becomes very expensive. So we did it the other way around. We bought the Yellow Pages, so the registry of all the businesses and so on, and we selected 2 cities, so 2 early adopter cities where we would try this. And let's say we found the painters, and there were, I don't know, 80 painters in the city, which we found in Yellow Pages. So we started running ads for the demand side, saying, in Wylio, you can find 80 painters in this city to solve your whatever you need done. And this the same we did for plumbers, and so on and so on. And all of a sudden, people started downloading the app and writing requests. I need my flat painted, blah blah blah. When this started happening, we had 0 handymen on the platform. But what we did manually, and this was Wizard of Oz MVP kind of thing, we started calling up these painters and plumbers in Yellow Pages, and we told them, sir, if you download this app, there is a job waiting for you in this value. And this worked amazing, because this always persuaded them to download the thing. And once the first transaction went through, for them it was something which they got used to more and more. Of course, we had to then call them up a few times, but this was the way how to start acquire them. And as you can see on this poster, you probably don't understand it, it's in Slovak, but right now there are about 20,000 different handymen in whole of Slovakia. Later on, this scaled to Hungary as well, and I think also Czech Republic. But this is something where you have to start thinking, how do you hack the problem of acquisition when you don't have enough money? Company wasn't supporting us that much. They didn't give us too much money. I think we had a budget of about 50,000 euros altogether to code the app and also to run the initial campaigns. So then it was up to us to dial up these people and then persuade them to join the platform. And those were the early adopters. And then they started, telling other friends that they're using it, and then it kind of caught the way of growth and continue scaling throughout the city. So this is very important. If I would sum up what growth hacking is, it's a mix of multiple things. This looks very complicated. I have a simpler explanation, but it's something to do with marketing, with data collection, with psychology of how people actually operate, work, and how they exist. And then it's also a bit about automation, which you usually don't have at the beginning, but then you try to implement it later on to make the process more optimal. There are multiple graphs which explain growth hacking. I think I found about 12 different ones. This is one of them, which is rather simple. It only has 5 stages. So it tells you about the acquisition phase. So how do customers find you? Then how do you activate those customers? So when do they realize that your proposition is very good and they're actually gonna pay for the service? Then there is the retention phase. So how do you keep these customers coming back to you so you don't lose them and they increase your lifetime value? How do you help your customers refer your solution to other people? So how do you turn them into advocates? And then, of course, how do you increase revenue? So how do you optimize this? There is one. I started first looking at this methodology, but I wasn't too happy about it because there's one part missing. So I iterated on that, and I found another one which is much more relevant, and this is one that I want you to use in the future. It actually has 6 stages, although they are aligned horizontally, not vertically, but it's the AAA triple R funnel from the 2010, I believe. So what is added here is the awareness part. And this awareness part is, I think, something that is very key and very important, especially for those of you who are still in the development phase, those of you who are still building the MVP. And I think all the funnels should start with the awareness phase and not with the acquisition phase. Because first you have to create awareness, and you have to give people reason to contact you in the future when they encounter a situation. So when they encounter a job which they need to be fulfilled by a certain product or service. So this is something that you can definitely take and use. I like the vertical separation between problems and solutions because it kind of forces you into doing some research in each of those phases and identifying what problems we have in each of those particular phases and also matching them to a solution. This is something that you can also draw vertically. So it's a funnel. So in the awareness phase, you will have most people, in the acquisition phase a little bit less, in the activation phase a little bit less, and it goes down. And what is important is that you measure in every single step of that funnel how many people are converting to the next phase, because only then you can optimize this whole thing. And whenever you start either collecting these early orders or you're measuring how people are clicking on the proposition which you created, it's always important to measure every single step. So let's run through these quickly. So in the awareness phase, the goal is to, of course, tell people that we are here and this is what we're doing. This is very important also for companies who are still in the development phase, because it gives you the opportunity to start speaking about the particular problem and see how people get triggered about that problem. And you can always say that, yes, we are here, we're solving it, and we are at this stage, and blah, 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 blah. But you're already creating some kind of a bubble around you. So it's not, you're not doing it in stealth mode. What counts in this phase or in this first stage is usually the impressions, visits, searches. Okay, so last week I was discussing with a few other companies that if you are still in the development phase, it makes sense to start writing good articles about the problem which you are solving, because if you have then good search engine optimization on your website, people who will be naturally Googling this problem might arrive at you. And by the time they arrive at your website, you might already have a solution, and it will be also an acquisition strategy for you to then convert them. At the beginning, if you don't have them, if you don't have the solution or so the product or a service, it makes sense to start thinking about this awareness and create this reason why people would visit your website. Second thing, acquisition. So this is when people actually come to your website, and you can start segmenting them. So based on the particular persona. So where are they coming from? What is their age? And there are, of course, multiple different ways of how you can segment these people. If you're a B2B company, you can also segment it based on size. Are they reaching out to me? Are they leaving their contact details? This is something when you have a Facebook pixel installed, you're already collecting some interesting information, and you can then target them, of course, with different types of ad than you would target people in the awareness phase, because those are the people who already visited you, and they already left some trace in your website. Third, this is where money transfer starts. So activation, this is the phase where you actually make a transaction. So they open up their wallet. So let's imagine in terms of testing. So let's say that we created this new energy drink 3.0. We started writing articles, so we created some awareness. Then we drove some people to our website, and activation would be when we persuade these people to actually make a pre-order. So our proposition was so good that these people decided to open their wallet, take out their card, put in the details and do a pre-order, or even do a full purchase. We also did campaigns where we let people do a full purchase, but we gave them a refund right away and told them, I'm sorry, we're still in development, blah, 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 blah. We gave them some reason, but this is the best test you can get. So getting people to open their wallet, this is the best thing, because, you know, if you ask people, would you like something new, better? Most of the people will say yes, but the breaking point comes when they actually have to open a wallet. So let's imagine they did this first transaction. We move into the second part of the funnel where, of course, these are the reasons when it can happen, but based on the discussions we had until now, I think it's pretty clear. But you know, the most valuable one is the purchase. When we move to the next part, this will only happen when the job to be done is matched with a good solution. So you have solved their problem. That's the only time when they will open their wallet and the activation will come to an end. When they move into the second part of the funnel, so the triple R, now you have to start thinking, those who have purchased already, how do we keep them? How do we motivate them to spend more? How do we, so especially probably some of you are software as a service, and this is the key thing. How do you keep people in the pipeline? How do you keep them, you know, subscribed? How so to pay you on a continuous basis, and maybe even to bring their friends in. So this is the retention part is very important, and it's something where you can also do some research. You can also do research on people who have churned, so people who have left. You can also speak to customers who are using the thing. It also makes sense to measure, in this case, how they are interacting it, how often, you know, whether there are any patterns before they leave, so you could identify them and maybe do some steps how to prevent the damage. Referral. Now when we're talking about this this phase of the funnel, we're already presuming that you're selling something and something that people can use, and you are now looking at ways how to improve it. Okay, so for those of you who are still in MVP or in development, the first two parts are most important, maybe the third one. So awareness, acquisition, and activation. The triple R part is you know, when you already have something which is live and which you can optimize. But referral, very important. So how do you motivate people to show it to their friends? How do you motivate people to ask their friends to try it out? You know, multiple ways. You can offer them some referral bonuses, some nice experience, contests. You can turn them into ambassadors. Multiple ways. And it's always about matching something to the particular type of product or service that you have, but you can find a lot of inspiration online. Last thing, this whole process is about optimizing revenue, right? Because you know, you want to get as much money from the customer, so you want to provide a lot of value, but you also want to get as much money as possible. So you want to increase the you want to increase the lifetime value, and you want to increase the cost of acquisition, because you know, those are the key metrics. Because at the beginning you have high or you know, usually when you start you have high customer acquisition costs, and those you optimize after time so they decrease. And the lifetime value should also be optimized to increase. There is a nice graph, this one that demonstrates it quite nicely. So if you look at it from left to right, so we acquire a customer for, I don't know, $10. So our customer acquisition costs are -10 because we spent $10, and then the person is paying us, I don't know, let's assume it's a SaaS software. So the person is paying us, I don't know, $5 a month. So in the second month, after the second month, our customer acquisition cost payback point arrives. And then as the person is paying and paying and paying for the upcoming months, our lifetime value is increasing. We can optimize the lifetime value by upselling, so giving him better features, a premium version, blah, 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 or we cross-sell another product. So those are the ways how to increase the lifetime value, but this is again something to think about once you actually arrive at the stage. And what happens at the end is when the customer leaves, you know, it comes back down because that's the churn, you know, and this you can calculate for every single customer because you know the acquisition cost, or you have to know the acquisition cost since you're measuring it. and you also know the lifetime value. So keep this in mind. This is the AAA RR funnel. Again, you can take it from the internet, or you can just use this one, which you'll find in the presentation, which you'll get. But start thinking about your awareness part. Start thinking about the how you're actually letting other people know that you are here, and then that will make it easier for you to also get into the acquisition phase when you start validating the thing. You know, for us, it was something that we discovered during our Wheelio experiences, and this actually proved to us very valuable, because when we were able to measure how much it costs us per impression, so you know, you have these metrics, the awareness metrics, how many people are we then able to push to download the app. That was the middle part, and then the last part, how many people did actually register, and how many of them placed an order, or how many of them reacted to a request from another user. So this was something very important, and I think this is the best way of illustrating this funnel and how it actually works on a double-sided platform. So AAA RR funnel. So summing it up, we have about 10 minutes left. So now is a good time to start thinking about the questions, if you have any. What did we talk about today? So at the beginning, we spoke a little bit about product market fit. What is it? You know, when does it feel right that you have a product market fit? When does it feel like you're not having a product market fit? Then we spoke about the tools. So how do you understand better what your customers want, what kind of problems they're facing, and so on and so on. So we spoke about the double diamond, which we know that has 4 phases: so the empathy phase, the define phase, the prototyping phase, and the validation phase. Then we spoke a little bit about the theory of getting jobs done. So how people are actually creating, so their problems that they need to solve are the jobs, and for those jobs they're hiring products and services. We spoke about the McDonald's example with the milkshake theory, and we then showed to ourselves the value proposition canvas, which is an aid on how to build the value proposition and how to match and mix those pains and gains with jobs to be done and products and services. Then we spoke a little bit about validation. So what are the different types of validation? So problem validation, proposition validation, prototype validation, and so on. This is something to keep in mind and to inspire ourselves, because this is super key in generating the initial revenue and taking the technology, taking the project, taking the service or product to the market and showing it to the customer. And then we spent talking about how to communicate, because we at the beginning said that this is one of the biggest challenges that the small companies have, is, you know, how to spread the word about themselves and how to communicate with people. So this is what we spoke about. There is also stuff that you can do at home. So if you found this interesting, this is what I suggest that you do. Of course, you know, you can take on a few of these exercises depending on what you're, you know, of what you want to take out of this. But what I usually recommend is that it makes sense to define your future customers and partners. So to go out and speak to them, to understand better what kind of problems they're facing, to maybe see the patterns, because not all of them can experience the same type of problem. So there might be different types of personas. Based on that, you can also find out who might be your early adopters and with whom you might want to test your proposition once you have it. Step 2, you know, as I said, speak to them, and you can input the insights into value proposition canvas. Be aware that you can have multiple value proposition canvases, because, you know, maybe you're not only doing one solution, but you can have multiple types of features. So, you know, you can have multiple value proposition canvases and you can test them against each other. And thirdly, you know, think about awareness using the AAA RR funnel. So what could be the activities that you could be right now in order to you could be doing right now in order to generate some awareness about whatever you're doing. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, then you can always write them into the chat. If not, you can always find me on LinkedIn. And this is what I offer to all the participants of these workshops. Feel free to find me on LinkedIn. My name is Slava Tuleja. And if you have any question in the future, or you start working on your exercise, then feel free to to reach out to me. If you fill it in the canvas and you want me to check it, just send it forward. I can I can have a look and I can give an answer to it. If I can help, I'll help. If not, I won't help. But feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I'm gonna send my LinkedIn link into the chat, so you can find me there. And yeah, if you want some help with the exercises or something, just reach out to me. And yes, and that's it. So if you have any questions, write them into the chat. If not, feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. And I thank you for your attention. And I hope to see you soon with maybe some of the other events which we're organizing at Bratislava Innovation Center, or maybe at some of the Tetra boot camps which are coming up. If you're interested in the design thinking methodology, then as Roman was saying, the design thinking workshop at the beginning of November, I think it's 10th. I definitely recommend this one because we covered design thinking in a bit, but diving into more detail usually makes sense. And the boot camp, which is happening later on in November, is a bit more comprehensive, and we discuss multiple different topics. So thank you for your attention, and I stop the screen sharing right now. And have a nice day. I see there are no questions, so have a nice day then.